Do apologise for being 4 minutes late. The memorial trees, QEII Park, and if staff could come to the table. That would be great. So, Dave, are you happy to move this?
Yes,
And I know that there'll be questions and you'll want to comment as well. And Glenn, are you happy to second it? Yes. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. So I'll open it up for questions to staff. Sarah? And I'm also very mindful of the fact that there are councillors that are new to council and haven't been part of the original decision, and therefore the paper looks a little bit empty in terms of some of the advice that we were given with the original
That's
decision.
what my question's around.
Yeah.
So the first time I'd heard the word memorial was with the title of the paper, but the paper itself didn't explain the reason that these trees were initially decided to be required trees. And is there some sort of memorial status, and is that affected, and is there anything we can do to contact people who might have been involved in that process?
Well, the term memorial more fits in keeping with the groupings of the trees, and some of those trees were planted over a number of years, but the main groupings or clusters were planted at the time of QE2 being established as a sports stadium for the games. It's not so much trees planted by individuals, so to speak. There are some within that, so it's a bit of a mixture.
Yeah, there are some that are specific and clearly identified, and we can contact those groups, but some are of a much more general memorials.
Yeah, but are those ones the ones that are affected here for this decision?
The 3 trees proposed to be removed, no, they're not memorial in terms of individuals or groups.
But they're part of a cluster?
Yes.
That was done, planted as a memorial?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's actually 3 significant memorials in QE2 Park. 2 of them sit right by the entrance to the old entrance to the park. One of them commemorates the fact that the park was the venue for the 1974 Commonwealth Games, and the other one, the plaque, is actually off the rock at the moment. I believe it's in storage, needs to go back again. And to my reckoning, it actually commemorates that it was the original site of the New Brighton Trotting Club, going way back. There is a third memorial that sits in the enclave of trees that are further in the park that were labelled trees that were desired to be retained, and under this proposal half of them would be, and there's one plaque in there that commemorates the local residents group that planted a tree around about the Commonwealth Games time as well. Unfortunately, where the plaque is currently sited is beside a tree that will go, so I've had assurances that plaque would be uplifted and repositioned in the remaining trees that are there.
Okay. I quite like the idea of memorial trees and memorial groupings of trees. Is there a chance of, while I know this is for the school site, that we were able to do maybe another small grouping or individual trees, probably the community board, in recognition of the opening of maybe the new QE2 or something like that? Yeah.
There's certainly space in amongst where the 2 primary memorials are to actually put another one in there. And in fact, it was something I'm going to suggest shortly, but yeah.
Mike.
Thanks. I just also had a question on the trees, because I was reading through some, I guess, older submissions, and there was one that's that talked about the Queen planting one of the trees. Is that correct? And is that any of the?
I think that tree may have been up close to the old stadium and it's gone. Yeah.
Phil?
I think I saw there's a proposal to have some replantings done of the trees, all right? Is there scope for that?
The MOE project has extensive landscaping and planting of trees, so their project includes an additional 340 trees within the campus development.
So that's what MOE are doing, they'll be doing the
Yes.
replanting?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Angus.
Any more questions? Yanni?
I'm still a little bit concerned about the fitness track and the public access. Like, that was one of the key hearing panel recommendations. And just so I'm clear, did council basically water that one down, or is it something that we're having discussions with?
The hearings panel recommendation, or the council resolution, reflected the wording in the hearings panel recommendation. That was a decision delegated to myself, which I've made a judgment call on in terms of the overall development of the school and where the interconnectivity and walking tracks and paths are within the school, that satisfies the intent of the council resolution.
So just in terms of the public perception though, I mean, the key thing from the hearings panel in the press release that we put out said enabling a publicly accessible walking track to be created that circles the entire park, covering the land owned by the ministry and the land retained by council. So are you confident that that's still happening?
I'm confident we have given effect to the council resolution. I think you'll find the council resolution does not say that.
Okay. Second question is, in terms of the numbers of trees that are being lost over the QE2 site, do you know what the total number is?
No, I hadn't added those up.
Right. Well, except these are mature. A lot of these are mature trees. So I'm just trying to understand. I guess the public submissions were really quite keen to protect the memorial trees. So in terms of, I guess, the public perception, the frontage will looks quite barren in terms of trees. Are most of the mature trees along the front being removed as part of this development?
Well, the council decision was to sell the site for a development for buildings and playgrounds. So implicit within that is that existing trees on the site would go. And the hearings panel decision and council decision was really only specific and related and concerned about two groups of trees, which this report speaks to, and the requirement to lose 3 of those to enable the development to take place in its current form.
Yeah, except those are the mature trees at the front of the site. So I'm just trying to understand the visual impact of losing all the mature trees along the front if we approve this.
Replacements though.
Well, that's quite a separate matter, but you've seen a fly-through through the site, which showed the street frontage along Travis Road and the landscaping that's going to occur there and the setback from the road of the buildings behind that.
Oh, yeah, okay. And just 2 final questions. One is, my understanding is one of the main issues is that the school wanted separate sports fields for each school, which has led to this problem. Have we discussed with the school as an alternative actually utilising one of the, I think, 7 or 11 fields that we're building as part of a joint sort of
We're
field,
talking about trees here, not playgrounds.
No, the reason for the trees being the reason we're having this debate today is because the trees that are proposed to be removed are in the middle of what's proposed to be a sports field. When we've got something like 11 or 7 sports fields being built next door by council. So I just wanted to know whether or not we've talked to the ministry about, instead of changing this, but actually utilising one of the, several of the sports fields we're building for one of the schools.
The school want to deliver the optimum curriculum for their students, which involves keeping on site all their activities, sporting and educational. They also want to or long term, anticipate that they will be utilising the council grounds in the long term. As the school develops and they get these sports teams, they'll be using more than just their on-site fields.
And just a final question around process. Were the people that made submissions to the hearings panel, have they been notified that we're considering this today? And has the community board also been notified and asked for a review?
No, there were some 380 submissions, I think. The issue around consultation is, of course, that the purpose of consultation is to elicit the views and preferences of the community. The advice that we've given is those views and preferences are very well known because we had 381 submissions through the process, and there is no need to engage with the community further because those views are known.
And what about the local community? Given that the board's doing a master plan, have they had a chance to make recommendations on this?
Well, this whole decision-making process has been dealt with by council. And this is a matter of planning for the school, not the whole of QE2. This is site-specific to the school.
Just following on from Yanni there, look, I know if this was approved and we didn't go back to the submitters who had specifically commented on the trees, I think that would be a bad look. I think we need to do that, even though you're saying we've received their consultation. But I mean, people are starting to get angsty that they say, well, they submitted on a consultation on a plan, and then after that was closed and a decision made, then a new decision's made that wasn't consulted on. And 3 trees could make a difference to how somebody commented on the consultation, and I just think if it's possible, we should.
3 trees.
Well, the proposal, of course, was not around trees. It was around the disposal of the land to enable the schools to be built. The trees were issues that arose out of the consultation process. The purpose of consulting is to gauge the views and preferences of the community. Those views and preferences are well known. We had 381 submitters, I think. There's no legal reason why we would need to consult further because we know the views and preferences of the community.
Yeah, I wasn't really consulting. I meant, contacting them personally.
But you'd be contacting them for what purpose?
To advise them that we'd made a variation on what we consulted on.
Well, we didn't consult on the trees as such. We consulted on disposing of the land.
Yanni just sent through the press release, which is quite helpful, ensuring that some of the park's memorial trees are protecting the development of the school by having an encumbrance registered against the title of the land. So when the press release went out, it said some trees. There are 3 fewer trees that would be affected by the encumbrance that we put on based on the recommendation.
Right, so it wasn't highly specific.
No, the submissions were not specific about specific trees. That was the interpretation of the hearings panel based on the submissions.
Right, okay. And I mean, we do, we're a garden city, we do want to protect our important trees, we do. So, I mean, this is a big ask. I'm not trying to minimise it because we went through it tree by tree, pretty
Leaf
much.
by leaf.
Leaf by leaf. We left no stick undead. Glenn.
Yep.
I don't know what's wrong with me today.
That's all right. Maybe you need more.
I'm just blocking all your names. I don't know why.
That's all right. I'd like to check over the submissions, whether for or against. The biggest issue was over the Travis Road Medical Car Park. Now I can't remember the exact percentage, but is that your information as well?
Yeah. It was a significant issue, yes.
Yeah, more than any other issue being the fitness track or the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd just like to check, and by the way, in your report, which says those in favour, those against, a lot of those submissions included in the against were kind of like conditional. They said no, but if you retain the car park, we're happy to support. So important you know that. Just in 9.11.1 over the 3 required trees, I think it is, that it says that they're in poor to fair condition. Is that, just wanted to check that.
11.1.
9.11.1 in the report, page 421. The 3 required trees in poor to fair condition. It's at the end of that para.
Yes, one of them is, an arborist has checked the trees, one of them is in poor condition.
Right.
And the other two are in fair condition based on his assessment.
And these are the required as set aside from the...
These are the 3 that are the subject of this report that are in the required area.
Right, and which are deemed to have the higher status. Although it also notes their heritage and species status actually doesn't make them top draw trees either.
No, they're not. They're not particularly large or old trees, and they're relatively common trees.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
All right, so I'll put the motion.
I want to speak to it.
David?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the motion.
Yes.
And I'm in favour of the motion. However, I would like to point out that I do think the hearings panel were not particularly well supported with accurate information about the trees in the first place. I went down there last night and had a look and were shown the 3 trees that are to be removed, but what the report doesn't tell you is that there's probably another 10 trees on top of that are going to go in that same area. So we as a hearings panel, I don't believe, actually got accurate information on the trees in the first place along there, but be that as it may, I am in support of the motion. What the motion, the report also talks to is the fact that the other stand of trees, which was termed trees that are desirable to retain, and in actual fact had no encumbrance on them, and under another development plan, there's 11 of those trees there, by the way. All bar one of those would have gone, and they are all quite mature trees. Under this plan, we actually get to retain 7 of those trees, and one of them has that memorial that will be shifted along into the remaining stand of trees. So I think in the overall context of the request, there is a positive outcome in that we do retain some quite mature trees. The ones that we are losing are quite, in terms of comparison, are a lot less in stature. I do take a wee bit of issue with arborists and their analysis of trees, and it's always a hugely contentious item around council where they say that the 3 trees are of lesser value in terms of heritage and species and poor to fair condition. Well, I can assure you one of them is actually in my humble opinion in very good condition, but be that as it may. So I think looking at the overall impact that this development will have on the eastern suburbs, and the fact that yes, we are losing 3 of the trees that we actually asked to be retained, and retaining 7 trees that we would have lost otherwise is quite a good compromise. The loss of those 3 trees really doesn't impact at all on the area where the memorial stones are, or rocks are, and in fact most of that memorial area does actually fall in council-owned land, or a reasonable percentage of it. I would actually like to suggest that in recognition of the Commonwealth Games and former uses of QEII Park, that area does receive a bit more of a landscaping plan and is up-spec'd, and it could be quite a focal point of memory to the former QEII Stadium the Commonwealth Games and the old trotting track that used to be there before. So despite some reservations and some misgivings about the information we got in the hearings panel, I will support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I too have some reservations about this, and I think it's beholden upon those who wish to use land that council has or had to, take note of the decisions of council and actually design around those and actually be very clear about those. But in this circumstance, I think that the two local councillors, Dave especially, have a much better hold on the community's views and preferences, and so I will be sort of deferring to their local knowledge on this one, and because it is local, and so I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Well, as you know, I feel very strongly about trees in the city. I've just sent you around the arborist report, so for those that are critical of not having the information, take the time to read that, because that report was actually really clear. It was clear on a number of trees in the site being retained, and there's a number of different things that you can see, trees that have been identified, memorial trees and trees worthy of protection. And it's a real shame that actually most of those trees are going to be gone if we approve this today. And I appreciate that there's another group of trees that council didn't put an encumbrance on, which I voted against at the hearings panel and at the council, because I thought they also should have been retained. But there are a significant amount of trees that will be worthy. And I just want to read you one of the quotes, because I think it's really important. I consider, this is from the arborist, I consider that collectively these trees within the landscape context of the gently sloping lawns to be worthy of being protected and retained in the redevelopment of the entry to the park. They are complemented by trees of similar stature immediately to the west of the existing entry. Together they all have botanical interest and contribute to the pleasantness of the Travis Road streetscape. So there's a number of comments like that through the arborist report, and it wasn't on every tree. The arborist actually looked at the trees that were worthy, the trees that were memorial, and the ones that weren't. And so I just think it's a real shame. Basically, this comes down to the Ministry of Education having their own sports fields in an area where we've got extensive sports fields being proposed. That is the only reason that you're being asked to take off this encumbrance and allow these trees to be demolished. And these are a huge number of trees that are going from this site. If you look at, or removed, if you look at the overall plan, I encourage you to think about the huge number of mature trees that are going to be removed from this site. QEII is a very special site. The consultation was full of people that came and said, we actually really think that it's great that the schools are going here, but some were critical of the school going in the southeast quadrant and one of them going further up to the northwest, so that public access around the walking track and the trees and the memorial features could be retained. And unfortunately, as a hearings panel, we weren't able to change the location of where the school could go in terms of the footprint that we were consulting on, but actually we were able to try and protect some of the trees that were memorial. And so I feel very strongly that we should not be removing healthy, mature, significant trees in the city when we've already losing so much on this QE2 site. We're losing so much across the city simply for the sake of the ministry that wants to have a dedicated sports field for a school when we've got extensive sports fields going back in this place, which I personally think we could utilise with the school now rather than waiting for later on. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense. This highlights, I think, the problem with going out for a consultation without any details about what's being proposed and the impact that that will have. And when people are asked if they want council to dispose of a reserve without seeing the number of trees that are going to be removed, I think it's hard for people to comment. And I think, again, as I've said many times, hopefully there can be a lesson learnt for the future decisions we have to make. But today, I'm not supporting this. I take exception to the fact the hearings panel didn't receive good arborist advice. We did get arborist advice. It was very clear, and it said that these trees should be protected.
Thank you. I was on the hearings panel as well with Councillors Yanni and David, And the main issue that came through for residents, both in written form and verbally, was retaining the medical centre car park. So that's what matters for local residents there. Trees were one of the items submitted on as well, along with the fitness trail and also the proceeds actually from the sale to the ministry. But by far and away the main issue was retaining the medical centre car park. That came through very clearly. We had a former deputy mayor and a councillor approach us about that, and they've retained their sense of where the lie of the land is with the community. When we drill down to this report, essentially, aside from the desired trees, it comes down to 3 required trees in poor, fair condition. So, for me, I mean, when I look at the bigger picture and I stand back, it literally is a case of not losing sight of the wood for the trees. And the big picture here really is the revitalisation of the east. So if you think about the overall project, these 2 schools, and Joe Scott has provided a marvellous Vimeo on this, along with CSG and the aquatic centre which we're building. This is terrific, and my vision is to I want the city to be united, and I think this will really help. This will go a long way towards it and kind of rebalance the investment. So that's what I'm holding on to in this decision. So those poor old 3 trees in poor to fair condition, really, without being smart about it, there's kind of no contest in this debate. So I hope you really will support this and give a big tick to the revitalisation of the east of Christchurch.
Those opposed say no. Okay, so the 1 abstention, Dion Swiggs and Vicky Buck abstain, and Yanni Johansson, Pauline Cotter vote against. Right, that's carried, thank you.